Hello and welcome, I'm Joshua Barnes and you're watching The World Report. Let's first take a look at the headlines. Millions of Americans are hit with a winter storm that could be the coldest for over a decade. A state of emergency has so far been declared in 7 states. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken visits South Korea and warns of further Russian-North Korean cooperation. Meanwhile, North Korea fires its first ballistic missile in around 2 months as Ukraine launches a new offensive in Russia. According to reports, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is expected to step down this week. The announcement, which could happen today, comes amidst calls for his ousting. A Hamas official states the group is ready to release 34 Israeli hostages. This would be the first phase of a potential ceasefire deal as talks resume in Qatar. South Korean investigators have requested an extension of the arrest warrant for suspended President Yoon Suk-yeol as they face resistance from presidential security. Meanwhile, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken discusses strengthening the South Korea-US alliance amidst political turmoil in Seoul. Here's the report.
South Korean investigators attempting to arrest suspended President Yoon Suk-yeol have asked for an extension to the warrant that expires Monday. The Corruption Investigation Office for High-Ranking Officials CIO plans to request an extension of the arrest warrant in court on Monday. Investigators probing Yoon over his December 3rd imposition of martial law on Friday again failed to serve an arrest warrant. They were blocked by Presidential Security Service guards and military troops who formed a human chain to prevent access to Yoon. The CIO had asked police to take over the arrest warrant execution. A police official stated there was a legal dispute over the transfer, and the warrant will now be executed by both the police and CIO. Seok Dong-hyeon, a lawyer for Yoon, argued that the attempt to transfer the arrest warrant's execution implied the CIO's probe and warrant were illegal. Meanwhile, Yoon supporters, led by Pastor Jun Kwang-hoon, called the fight an international battle for freedom, which they emphasized would continue until they reaped the results. In other news, the US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, is currently in Seoul discussing measures to strengthen the South Korea-US alliance and trilateral cooperation with Japan. After his meeting with South Korean Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yul, Blinken stated that Washington had conveyed serious concerns to Seoul regarding certain actions taken by Yoon during his martial law declaration. He also reaffirmed confidence in the key Asian allies' handling of the political turmoil. The martial law declaration plunged one of Asia's strongest democracies into uncharted territory, creating a power vacuum. Yoon and the Prime Minister, who became acting president, were both impeached, prompting the appointment of a second acting leader to manage the country's affairs. Bureau Report, NewsX.
Let's now get some updates from across the business world. Nippon Steel's $14.9 billion bid for US Steel faced challenges not only from the Biden administration, but also Cleveland-Cliffs CEO Lourenço Goncalves. After Cleveland-Cliffs' $7 billion offer failed in 2023, Goncalves told investors in multiple calls that the merger would likely be blocked. His claims were confirmed after Biden halted the deal in December 2023. Asian markets showed a mixed performance on Monday as investors awaited key economic updates highlighting US strength supporting the dollar's rise. Reports hinted that the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau could soon resign, adding political uncertainty. The news slightly boosted the Canadian dollar and the US dollar fell 0.3% to 1.4404 against the Canadian counterpart. In recent weeks, several major US banks, including Goldman Sachs, Wells Fargo, Citi, Bank of America and Morgan Stanley, have left the Net Zero Banking Alliance. The NZBA is a coalition focused on aligning banking practices with climate goals. This has raised concerns among campaigners about the industry's commitment to reducing fossil fuel. Only JP Morgan remains in the group. Insignia Financial shares hit a 3-year high after a takeover bid of $2.87 billion Australian dollars from US-based CC Capital Partners. This offer beats Bain Capital's bid of $2.67 billion. If the deal goes through, CC Capital will gain control over Australia's massive private pension market, valued at $4.1 trillion Australian dollars. China's services industry grew quickly in December, mainly due to higher demand within the country. A key measure of this growth, the Chaishan S&P Global Services Purchasing Managers Index, went up to 52.2 from 51.5 in November, showing that the sector is expanding. This matches the official government report, which also showed growth in services. KKR, a US private equity firm, sent a letter to Fujisoft. It asked the company to make a court filing against Bain. KKR wants to stop Bain Capital from breaking a non-disclosure agreement. Both KKR and Bain are competing to buy Fujisoft. The bids are valued at up to $2 billion. A massive winter storm moving across the United States will not stop the US Congress from meeting on Monday to formally certify Republican Donald Trump's election as president. According to Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson, Johnson expressed hope for full attendance despite the storm and encouraged lawmakers to remain in the city. Here's the full report.
A massive winter storm moving across the United States will not keep the US Congress from meeting on Monday to formally certify Republican Donald Trump's election as president, Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson said on Sunday.
As you know, the Electoral Count Act requires this on January 6th at 1 p.m. So whether we're in a blizzard or not, we are going to be in that chamber making sure this is done. You know, we're 15 days out from the inauguration of President Donald J. Trump for his second term, and we want to make sure that we're jump-starting the agenda now over the next 2 weeks so that he's prepared and ready on day one. We have a lot to do, as you know.
Johnson said he hoped there would be full attendance despite the storm and that he had encouraged lawmakers to stay in the city. Incoming President Donald Trump threw his support on Sunday behind having one sweeping border, energy and tax bill. Members of Congress are getting to work on one powerful bill that will bring our country back and make it greater than ever before. We must secure our border, unleash American energy, and renew the Trump tax cuts, Trump wrote on Truth Social. Republicans must unite and quickly deliver these historic victories for the American people. Get smart, tough, and send the bill to my desk to sign as soon as possible, he added. The Congressional Joint Session on January 6th every 4 years is the final step in reaffirming a presidential election after the Electoral College officially elects the winner in December. Bureau Report, NewsX.
Let's now head to the Indo-Pacific region for more breaking news updates. Malaysia's appeals court has granted a bid by jailed ex-premier Najib Razak. He sought to see a document he claims should allow him to serve his sentence at home. This marks a rare win for the disgraced former leader, who is at the centre of the country's biggest scandal. However, a 3-member bench ruled 2-1 on Monday to grant Najib's appeal. This allows him to use the decree to argue his case before the High Court. The Philippines has deployed air and sea assets from its military and Coast Guard. These are being used to monitor China's largest Coast Guard vessel within its exclusive economic zone. The Philippines has called the ship's presence an act of Chinese intimidation, coercion and aggression. According to the Philippine Coast Guard, the monster ship was located 65 to 70 nautical miles off the coast of Zambales province on Sunday. More than 260 weak and hungry Rohingya refugees, mostly women and children, have landed in Indonesia on 2 boats. Police and military officers, in collaboration with the UN Refugee Agency and the local government, are working to gather more information about the refugees. They are being assisted to ensure their safety, according to East ACEH Police Chief Nova Suryandra. A panic-stricken elephant has killed a Spanish woman in Thailand. She was bathing the animal at the elephant centre, according to local police. Experts said the elephant may have been stressed. This could be due to being forced to interact with tourists outside its natural habitat. Shigemi Fukuhori, the survivor of the 1945 Nagasaki atomic bomb, has passed away at the age of 93. He devoted his life to advocating for peace and campaigning against nuclear weapons. Fukuhori died on January the 3rd at a hospital in Nagasaki. The Urakami Catholic Church, where he had prayed almost daily until last year, confirmed his passing on Sunday. The winter storm Blair has hit the plains, Midwest and Mid-Atlantic of US with snow, ice and freezing temperatures, prompting a wave of flight cancellations and making roads hazardous. The dangerous weather, covering a 1,500-mile stretch across the central part of the country, has affected millions of people. Here's the full report.
A winter storm brought snow, ice and freezing temperatures to a broad swath of the US on Sunday, with some 60 million people across more than a dozen states from Kansas to New Jersey under winter weather warnings and advisories. The storm was moving toward the mid-Atlantic, where Washington, D.C. was bracing for heavy snow and bitter cold on Monday. The storm has disrupted travel, bringing heavy snow to the eastern two-thirds of the U.S. Hundreds of flights have been cancelled across airports in the Midwest. Officials in several states are pleading with residents to keep off the roads unless there is an emergency. Widespread power outages are likely. Governors in several states, including Kansas, Kentucky, Arkansas, West Virginia and Virginia, declared states of emergency. Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson told that the weather would not prevent lawmakers from carrying out their duties, but federal offices in the nation's capital will be closed, the Office of Personnel Management announced. Total snowfall of between 6 and 12 inches was expected from southern Ohio to Washington. Hundreds of schools announced in advance that they would not open on Monday due to the storm, including public schools in Indianapolis, Cincinnati, Washington and Philadelphia. Behind the storm, bitterly cold air is settling across the Central America. Over 45 million people from Nebraska to Texas and east to Louisiana are under cold weather alerts, where low temperatures below freezing and wind chills below zero are possible. Bureau Report, NewsX.
We'll stay in North America for more latest news updates. 5 people have been killed with a further 7 injured following a shooting in southeast Mexican bar. A manhunt has been launched after the gun attack in Villahermosa, a city in Tabasco. Local authorities say surveillance footage is being monitored while police look for those responsible. US President Joe Biden banned offshore drilling across an immense area of coastal waters on Monday. According to a White House statement, the ban encompasses the entire Atlantic coast and the eastern Gulf of Mexico. It also includes the Pacific coast of California, Oregon and Washington. The narco musical Emilia Perez has won the Golden Globe for Best Comedy or Musical Film at this year's award ceremony. The movie is about a Mexican drug lord who undergoes surgery to live life as a woman. Directed by Jacques Audiard, the movie won 4 awards on the night. In the wake of the deadly New Year's Day terror attack, New Orleans is to be visited by President Joe Biden and the First Lady Jill Biden. The city mayor and other local authorities are expected to speak with Biden to discuss security ahead of the city's carnival season. Known as Mardi Gras, the carnival will take place on the 4th of March. A former hairstylist at Fox Sports has filed a lawsuit against ex-host Skip Bayless and others within the organisation. Nushin Faraji claimed that the presenter made repeated unwanted advances towards her, allegedly offering $1.5 million to have sex with him. In the lawsuit, it also claimed that Fox Sports allowed senior managers and on-air personalities to abuse workers without fear of punishment. Bayless has yet to respond to the allegations, while Fox say they will engage in the investigation. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is expected to announce his resignation this week. Multiple sources suggest the announcement could come as early as Monday ahead of a Liberal Party caucus on Wednesday. It's still unclear if Trudeau will remain in an interim role while the party searches for new leadership. Here are the latest updates.
I love this country. I really do. I trust Canadians. There is no place I'd rather be than Canada, and it is the absolute privilege of my life to serve as your Prime Minister.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is expected to announce his resignation this week, with multiple sources reporting it could happen as early as Monday, ahead of a Liberal Party caucus on Wednesday. It remains unclear if he will stay on in an interim role while the party seeks new leadership. Trudeau's popularity has sharply declined in recent months, with his government barely surviving no-confidence votes. Challenges, including from US President-elect Donald Trump, have complicated his position. In December, Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland resigned after a public disagreement over how to handle Trump's trade threats, marking the first open dissent in his cabinet. Trudeau reshuffled his cabinet to quell political unrest, but tensions with Trump continued, with the president-elect mockingly referring to Trudeau as Canada's governor. Once a rising star in Canadian politics, Trudeau led the Liberals to victories in 2015, 2019, and 2021. However, he now trails Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre by 20 points in the polls. Trudeau's political career began in 2008, and during his tenure, he implemented significant reforms, including a new trade deal with the US and the legalization of cannabis. Bureau Report, NewsX.
Let's now take a look at some latest news updates from across South America. The month-long campaign for general elections in Ecuador began on Sunday as President Daniel Noboa faces a challenging war against drug gangs and a power struggle within his administration. The campaign, with 16 presidential candidates, including leftist Luisa González and indigenous leader Leonidas Iza, will end on February the 6th, 3 days before the election. Ecuador's former Vice President, Jorge Glass, was returned to prison hours after he was temporarily evacuated for security reasons. Earlier in the day, Glass's lawyer, Sonia Gabriela Vera, said the former Vice President had been evacuated from La Roca prison after an attempt on his life by mutinying inmates. She said the government was responsible for the situation. Venezuelan opposition leader Edmundo González Urrutia, recognised by the US and several nations as president-elect, urged the military on Sunday to acknowledge him as commander-in-chief. This appeal comes amid his international campaign challenging President Nicolás Maduro's authority, following disputed election results and an impending January the 10th presidential inauguration. The Argentine president Javier Milei has managed to attain some of his goals. A report from an Argentine publication has claimed that Milei intends to introduce some new labour reforms to the country as well. Milei plans to introduce 12-hour-a-day shifts for Argentine workers. This would amount to a 76-hour shift in a 6-day work week. This shift would have no overtime. Thousands of people lined the streets of Suriname's capital for the funeral procession of Desi Bouterse. He led the country both as a coup leader and elected president before dying as a fugitive from justice. The government of the former Dutch colony had ruled out a state funeral for Bouterse, who was sentenced in 2023 to 20 years in prison over the killing of opposition members in 1982. An earthquake measuring 6.1 on the Richter scale has struck El Salvador. The epicenter was at a depth of 87 kilometers, although the quake was strong. Authorities are still assessing the full impacts, including any casualties or damage to infrastructure. Emergency response teams are on standby, ready to respond to any immediate needs, while they gain a clearer picture of the quake's aftermath. North Korea's latest missile launch sparks international condemnation. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken accuses Pyongyang of violating UN resolutions while warning of growing North Korean-Russian ties amid the Ukraine conflict. Let's take a look at the report.
North Korea has fired a ballistic missile into the sea at the same time the top United States diplomat was holding meetings in the South Korean capital, Seoul. South Korea's military said the missile was launched eastward shortly after US Secretary of State Antony Blinken met with South Korean acting President Choi Sang-mok. Both Blinken and South Korean Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yul condemned the launch at a joint news conference, with Washington's top diplomat calling it another violation of multiple UN Security Council resolutions.
We condemn the DPRK's missile launch just today, yet another violation of multiple UN Security Council resolutions.
Blinken said Monday that the US believed Russia was expanding space cooperation with North Korea in exchange for its troop contribution in fighting Ukraine.
The DPRK is already receiving Russian military equipment and training. Now, we have reason to believe that Moscow intends to share advanced space and satellite technology with Pyongyang.
Blinken said more than 1,000 North Korean troops have been killed or injured in the war on Ukraine. Moreover, Blinken said the US believed that Russia may be close to formally accepting North Korea's status as a nuclear power. Bureau Report, NewsX.
That is all we have time for. We'll be back with more of your latest breaking news updates from across the world.